Up, and we have some breaking news, and I think this is quite significant for those of us who are waiting to see when our sports as we know them will come back. The Chinese Basketball League, which is seen as many as the test case for recovery from the coronavirus pandemic, has delayed its restart. The league had planned to return on April 15th. It now says it will delay that until at least May after failing to receive clearance from the Chinese government. ESPN has confirmed all of this. Our NBA insider Brian Windhorst, who has been using that comparison very effectively to give us a sense of where things are going to go, will join us live exactly an hour from now to tell us why the NBA is paying very close attention to what's happening in China. It's an important story, and it's something we'll keep an eye on for you as we continue here. Meanwhile, I go back to sneaky Hembo, and let me get Orlovsky in here because I love nothing more than when he gets these wrong. Cam Newton, who is now a free agent, Dan, is one of two quarterbacks in history with 50 career rushing touchdowns. Who's the only other one?
Well, Greeny, Hembo wants me to say Michael Vick, and that's where my brain initially went to, but I'm going to say my Connecticut boy, Steve Young.
Oh, my goodness, he got it right. Steve Young is right. That is correct. Steve Young, 51. Actually, Michael Vick isn't even close. Steve McNair and Cordell Stewart are next on the list. Dan Orlovsky gets it right. That is one of the great upsets in the history of American sports as we know them. And you have earned then the right to answer this question first. Because as we look at Cam and possible landing spots for him, for those just joining us, we talked about the possibilities of the Chargers and the Patriots. Another one that will jump to mind is Washington, because his longtime head coach, Ron Rivera, with whom he had so much success in Carolina, is now the coach of the Skins. Would that make sense to you, Dan Orlovsky?
No, Greeny. And are you going to be the one to tell Cam Newton that he's got a likely 50% chance to be a backup quarterback this year? I mean, because that's the reality is Washington still has Dwayne Haskins, and Washington still should be viewing Dwayne Haskins as their future for the next 10, 12, 15 years. So every decision that they make should be, how do we support this young quarterback? How can we get him a football team that surrounds him to allow him to play as good as possible? And I don't see that Cam Newton mentally has resigned himself to go, yeah, you know, I'll play backup role, I'll play mentor role. Cam Newton still wants to be a competitor. We just talked for 10 minutes about how in 2018 he was an MVP caliber type of performer. And so I can't imagine in 18 months that he's thought, yeah, you know what, I can't play anymore. And so he might say, yeah, I can still play, let me go be the starter. But what happens if Washington deems Dwayne Haskins to be the starter? Do you want Cam Newton, an unhappy backup that's not maybe committed or willing to help Dwayne Haskins grow? That would be my biggest issue.
I hear what you're saying. I might see it differently, which is he might identify that as a place where he would have a good chance of becoming the starting quarterback, depending on how things were to break for him. D. Wood, what do you think?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Orlovsky here. I don't think the Washington Redskins are a good fit for Cam Newton. It seems like the Redskins are committed to young quarterbacks on the roster trying to develop, particularly Dwayne Haskins, who, by the way, the owner, Dan Snyder, that was his pick to be the future of the Washington Redskins. And then also the Washington Redskins gave up a 5th-round draft pick for Kyle Allen, which is pretty, peculiar, considering they could have waited to try to get Cam Newton to see how this whole situation played out, but they gave up a draft pick to bring Kyle Allen into the mix. So I think that signal right there was clearly that the Washington Redskins are moving on as far as young quarterbacks, and they're not interested in a guy like Cam Newton.
Yeah, that's another former Carolina Panther. So then I bring Shefty back into this thing. I want to put the video back up there because there's another quarterback who belongs in this conversation for different reasons, but somewhat similarly. You're all aware, we talked about it yesterday at great length, that Mel Kiper, in his latest mock draft, moved that man, Tua Tagovailoa, down 2 spots from 3rd in the draft to 5th in the draft to Miami. And to me, we've been sort of looking at this draft as though it starts at number 3. But the reality, Adam Schefter, is that number 2 is a fascinating spot. We all understand Washington could just take Chase Young, and that's the end of that conversation. But they have Dwayne Haskins. We just addressed that situation. You have Cam Newton sitting out there who has connections to the coach. And you have Tua Tagovailoa sitting out there who some people think is going to be the next great NFL quarterback, but he also has injury concerns. What do you know of what the plan is at quarterback in Washington?
And you didn't even mention the fact that they just traded a 5th-round draft pick for Kyle Allen.
Right.
And they haven't given up hopes that Alex Smith can make it back. So for all of those reasons, as great as Tua is, as attractive as he might be, and as much as we saw the Cardinals break the mold last year of going quarterbacks in the first round in back-to-back years, it's still hard to imagine the Washington Redskins bypassing the player that many think is the top pass rusher in this draft and not taking Chase Young. It's just a logical pick. Yes, you look at the Tua scenario if you're the Redskins. Yes, you give it some consideration. But they have so much invested in the quarterback position already that it's just hard for me to see a team bypassing the pass rusher that affects the game as much on the defensive side of the football. It's just hard to imagine. Again, it'll come up. I know it. I got it. I still think Chase Young is the pick at 2.
Fair enough. I think that is the conventional wisdom. So then that does move us to 3. So what are you starting to hear? Now we're roughly a month away, so this is going to start rumbling. What are you starting to hear about teams that might be thinking of moving up and whether they believe they need to trade all the way up to 3 to get to it?
Well, the Lions will be all ears. The Giants at 4 will be all ears. And I think everybody's watching the teams behind them. The Dolphins at 5, the Chargers at 6. The Panthers just made quarterback moves this week, right? Signing Teddy Bridgewater, signing P.J. Walker. It's hard to imagine the Panthers under a new head coach, beginning a new regime, mortgaging the future and trading more picks, to go move up in the draft for a quarterback when I feel like they've invested in that position this offseason. But the Dolphins are sitting there with the 3 first-round picks. They've been targeting this draft for a quarterback for a long time. The Chargers are sitting right there. And it almost seems like a race between the Chargers and Dolphins right now as to see who can go up the board to go get Tua at 3 or 4.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Shefty. Great to see you as always, and we'll keep you close by. And I will also mention that the blueprint for Tua Tagovailoa may be as simple as playing the waiting game for a year or even 2. What you are looking at on your screen are the 5 winningest active quarterbacks in the National Football League. And as you can see, among them, only Ben Roethlisberger started even a single game during his rookie year. That came because of injury at that time. And Mel Kiper yesterday said on our show, redshirting Tua during his rookie season is the plan here, one way or the other. Dan Orlovsky, is that the right plan?
That's the only plan. That's the only plan, Greeny, is when you draft Tua, you draft him for 2021 and beyond. Greeny, 127 days ago, he had that catastrophic injury. A month ago, we're at the back end of March, a month ago, he was limping at the combine. You are not going to have an offseason where he's taking reps, whatever they may be, 7-on-7 or whatnot. He's not going to be taking any April or May or June reps likely in that offense. Could you imagine the recklessness by an organization to draft him and then in August give him his first reps in live or any form of live action in that offense, and then a month later go, hey man, you're going to be our day 1 starter? Like, that would be recklessness as an organization. You should absolutely sit him and let him get healthy and develop. And I also think this, Greeny, not only of physical health, but a mental health. We talk about athletes and them coming back from severe injuries, and oftentimes it's like, hey, with the ACL, they got to trust it, right? Could you imagine Tua, the next time he was on the field in a real game, live action, being the first time since he hurt his hip? Like, in 1 year, like, he's going to have to get through the mental block of trusting his body again to go out and perform. They should absolutely redshirt Tua.
So with all those hurdles that exist there, and granted, they're not his fault, and I feel terrible even asking the question, but D. Wood, would those keep you from giving up a whole lot to move up in the draft, to draft him with all of these questions surrounding him? Did I lose D. Wood? Boy, he's frozen in such a way that I had absolutely no idea. That was extremely effective. If we did that on purpose, candidly, I think it was excellent. D. Wood, can you hear me? If not, I'm going to go. There he goes. Okay,
yes.
He can. Go ahead. Would all of these injury concerns wind up keeping you from moving up in the draft and taking Tua?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't prohibit me from moving up in the draft. But I do agree with Dan. Listen, before everything that's been going on in our country, I would have redshirted Tua. But now, where we are as a country, this unprecedented, situation that we're in, where you're not going to have the off season, or it's going to be, pretty much condensed. There's no way I would put Tua in a situation where he could possibly get re-injured or something could happen to my investment. So no, I would sit him the whole year, knowing that this dude is so talented, so special, that I'm going to sit him 1 year and then play him in 2021.
You know, it makes me think about the fact that Tua is not the only rookie quarterback, wherever they all wind up going, that won't get the usual reps during this spring. That could be a factor. We'll talk about it as we continue. Meanwhile, I want to remind you, we have parts 3 and 4 of the Oscar-winning 30 for 30 documentary, OJ Made in America, tonight at 7 and 9 Eastern, right here on ESPN and the ESPN app. If you're looking for stuff to watch and you haven't seen this, it's brilliant, and it continues tonight on ESPN. Meanwhile, as we continue, Tom Brady was asked about the Patriots yesterday, kept his comments brief. You'll hear why that was absolutely the right thing to do next. Get Up on ESPN.